Welcome to my channel Manor Studios. For more content like this, please like and subscribe.
Mama, K2, watching documentaries again.
Chapter 2. The Gathering Shadows.
The return of the Golden Skull was only 4 moons away. Each night the stars seemed to shine a little dimmer, as though the heavens themselves were shrinking from what was to come. The final moon would be the Crimson Moon, a harbinger of the deity's wrath and a reminder of the terrible curse that had been placed upon the world of Cleves. And though the Crimson King ruled his vast empire with an iron fist, fear had begun to gnaw at his mind, and the weight of his pact hung over him like a shroud. The Crimson King, once the boy with a forgotten name, who had toiled under the merciless Trison, now found himself haunted by his own ambitions. His mind, once sharp and ruthless, had started to fray under the strain of the impending doom. His court whispered that he had begun to slip into madness, but none dared speak of it openly. The king had ordered martial law, sending spies into every corner of his kingdom and executing those who spoke treasonous words. Even a mere whisper of dissent could be fatal. The streets were filled with a tense silence, broken only by the boots of soldiers and the cries of the condemned. To prepare for the Golden Skull's return, the Crimson King ordered that his fabled golden spear, the weapon granted by the god himself, be buried deep beneath the mountains, hidden where even he could not reach it. Every night the king donned his armor and slept surrounded by an array of weapons, with the azure cane by his bedside. His advisors assured him that all was well, that his preparations would ensure victory. But the king was not so easily placated. He had grown old. His once mighty body weakened by fear and time, and his mind weighed down by the burden of his curse. The strongest and most trusted warrior in his army, General Mazuka, known as the Black Centurion, was tasked with the kingdom's most crucial mission. A man of unparalleled strength and loyalty, the Black Centurion was feared and respected by all. He wore the ebony mantle, an ancient set of tribal armor imbued with powers from a deity unconnected to the Golden Skull. This armor granted him abilities beyond mortal limits, enhanced strength, speed, and the ability to cloak himself in shadow. The ebony mantle had been blessed by an old god, a protector spirit, who watched over the tribes of the ancient world. With this armor, the Black Centurion was as close to indestructible as a man could be. The Crimson King summoned the Black Centurion to his war room, where the king revealed his plan to hide his young son, the child of the goddess and heir to the throne. This prince, known in hushed voices as the Cursed One, was only 2 years old, yet he showed signs of an intelligence far beyond his years. This was remarkable, as hyper-intelligence had always been a gift of the Trison's daughters. The sons inherited hyper-strength and speed. Yet, the boy was different. A child of destiny, marked by both a blessing and a curse.
You must take him to the old Emerald City.
The king instructed, his voice wavering.
Hide him in the depths of the ancient cathedral. No place is more sacred, more protected. Take with you the 12 Azure Knights, the finest warriors of our land. They, like you, are blessed not by the Golden Skull, but by the ancestral gods of their tribes. The boy must survive, even if I do not.
The 12 Azure Knights, known as the Black Hearts or Shadow Men, were warriors of legend. Each knight was a master assassin, skilled in the arts of stealth and death, their loyalty to the Crimson King absolute. They wore the cloaks of the ancients, enchanted garments that allowed them to move unseen and strike with the silence of shadows. They had bent the knee to the king, swearing fealty in blood, and now they stood ready to lay down their lives to protect the future of Cleves. Together, the Black Centurion and the 12 knights set out, the infant prince held tightly in the arms of his protector. The journey to the Emerald City was treacherous. Through lands ravaged by the king's wars and haunted by creatures of the void, but they pressed on, guided by their duty and the weight of the king's command. As they journeyed, the Crimson King's preparations continued. His captains and majors rallied the main army, fortifying the city and setting traps designed to ensnare even a god. Trenches were dug, walls reinforced, and weapons forged. Every blacksmith in Cleves was summoned to craft instruments of war, and the forges burned day and night. The king himself supervised the preparations, his eyes sunken and haunted. His advisors urged him to rest, to trust in his warriors, but he would hear none of it. He wore his armor daily, refusing to leave his throne without it, and his once fearsome presence had begun to dissolve into a figure marked by paranoia and desperation. At night he dreamed of the blood moon, of the curse he had laid upon his descendants. He saw their faces, each child he had ordered executed, hoping to break the chains that bound him to the golden skull. And in his dreams, he saw the monster he had unleashed as a boy, the golden skull's hollow eyes and wicked smile. He could hear its laughter, mocking him, taunting him with the inevitability of his fate. Meanwhile, the Black Centurion and his company reached the Emerald City, a place of myth and legend, hidden deep within the ancient forest. The city was a relic from a time before time, a place where the old gods still lingered in silence. Within its heart lay the Emerald Cathedral, a towering structure that shimmered with an ethereal glow. It was here that they hid the prince, entrusting his fate to the power of the gods who had watched over their people for generations. The prince, though young, seemed to sense the gravity of the situation. He was quiet and watchful, his bright eyes absorbing every detail of his surroundings. The Black Centurion could see in the child a strength and wisdom that defied his age, a spark of something ancient and powerful. Back in Cleves, the Crimson King prepared for what would be his final battle. As the moons waned, he declared martial law, sending his spies to root out any hint of betrayal. Executions became a common sight as the king's paranoia grew and his grasp on sanity slipped further. The people of Cleves were gripped by fear, both of the Golden Skull's return and of their own king. In the weeks leading up to the Crimson Moon, the Crimson King summoned the lords and nobles of his land to a grand feast, a tradition before any great battle. They arrived in splendor, draped in the finery of their stations, bearing gifts and oaths of loyalty. But the feast was tense, the air thick with unspoken dread. The nobles murmured among themselves, casting wary glances at the king, whose eyes were wild and feverish. It was then that she appeared, a strange woman, her face obscured by a dark veil, her voice a low, chilling whisper. She approached the king without fear, her movements slow and deliberate, and spoke words that sent a shiver down his spine.
Do you remember the children you promised to the Golden Skull?
She asked, her tone dripping with contempt.
The hour is almost nigh. Do you remember me? I bore you 3 sons, each one you cast aside like refuse. You forgot me, as you did the others who bore your kin while you bathed in the glory of conquest.
The king froze, the memories rushing back with a sickening clarity. She spoke his true name, the name he had abandoned long ago when he became the Crimson King.
Kaelin,
The boy who had once toiled under the Trison, the boy who had dared to dream of power and paid the ultimate price.
You were the first of your kind,
she continued, her voice echoing with both sorrow and anger.
the boy with the forgotten name, who labored under the throne of the gods. And now, you are the butcher king of Cleves. But your time is ending, Kaelin. The hour is nigh, and the guest of honor has arrived.
The lords and nobles gasped as the woman's veil fell, revealing her face. Pale, ethereal, and hauntingly beautiful. And as she spoke, the hall grew cold, a dark presence filling the air.
All hail the ghoul smith, all hail the divine, all show reverence, for the great golden god of death is here. All hail the ghoul smith, all hail the new god of the omniverse.
She said, her voice a twisted mixture of reverence and dread. The Crimson King felt a chill crawl down his spine as the shadows in the hall began to thicken. The feast fell silent, and in that moment he knew that his preparations, his armies, his traps, all of it would mean nothing. The Golden Skull had returned, and the reckoning he had evaded for centuries was now at hand. And as the lords and nobles looked on in horror, the king's heart filled with a fear greater than any he had ever known. The price of his ambition had finally come due, and there would be no escape. The hour was indeed nigh, and all of Cleves would bear witness to the wrath of the Golden Skull.
K2, boy, if you're hungry, put some wieners on the boil.